So here we are, block 8. My name is Christine Perret. I'm very happy to welcome you and to welcome this panel of esteemed panelists. This is the session about augmented reality and emergency responders, first responders. And these folks have been discussing topics that are very, very important to them, to all of us. And they decided on a special format, how they're going to approach this session by introducing themselves individually and telling you about what they care about and how they're interconnected. So I think I'm going to hand it over. Thank you all for making this a very successful and very successful panel in advance. And I want to thank Captain Kirk McKenzie, who's been at the heart of this and inviting a lot of people to come to this important event.
Thank you, Johan.
Thank you.
Christine.
Do you have Johan's video?
Yeah, would you mind to play the video? Thank you,
Christine.
So I'm going to get started. My name is Johan Beilat. I'm a French and US citizen. I have been in the US for 20 years, and I discovered augmented reality 20 years ago at Chapel Hill, and I made it the objective of my career. So I've been developing a lot of augmented reality systems, including this one that was a system that we developed just after having an appointment at the office of the Naval Research Laboratory to work on a soldier system for Marines. We took the same technology and applied it to firefighters. So what you see in this video is basically an augmentation of a person that goes inside the building. And at the beginning of the video, you see that person outside. There is not really a point to augment that person, but when the person goes inside the building, the person being a firefighter, we can now see where the firefighter is with respect to the building. And this video is alternating between an augmented reality view and a map view. So when you have the map view, which is useful here in this video, to see the tracking accuracy and realize that the person is actually going through door and through stairs, you can use a map. But most of the building currently, we don't have maps. There is not information system that are homogeneously distributed over all the force. So this system was able to solve this problem. We basically use the video of the building and we can see where the person is with respect to the building. So why does it matter to see where firefighters are in a building? Is because the main cause of death of firefighter is because they become disabled and they run out of oxygen and we don't know where they are. And so the system was developed to solve that. So my interest in this development was the indoor tracking aspect and equipping the firefighter with something that allows them to track them despite, you cannot have GPS inside buildings. So here we were using ultra-wideband trilateration. It's basically the same that you do with Wi-Fi access point trilateration. And because the signal doesn't go often enough inside the building, you have to have another way to track when you cannot get the signal. So there is also an inertial tracking system that was foot-mounted. So this was just a prototype, but needed a bit more production, but was something that firefighters were really liking. Unfortunately, we never had the opportunity to push it into a product. So that will conclude my discussion.
Thank you. I'm Martijn Bosch. I'm Dutch, but I operate from Switzerland. We are in Lausanne. And the last 2 years, we've done a project between the EPFL, Technical University there, and regional fire departments to see if we could help them overcome the problem of smoke. Firefighters struggle a lot with smoke when they go into buildings. They take about 3 to 4 minutes to scan a room if there's people because they don't see much, and they're really using their hands and everything to go around in the space. And what our proof of concept was about, our pilot was about, was to give them thermal vision in their field of view using transparent displays, using augmented reality displays. And the advantage of that is that with thermal imaging or infrared, you can see through most kind of smoke. So it helps them a lot to orient and to get a way quicker overview of the situation. And we had very positive results. So we're We're working now to make actually the hardware needed to bring that into a breathing mask that they wear, and try to get it to the market. But yeah, there's still lots of challenges ahead there, but we're confident that we're getting somewhere.
My name's Kirk McKenzie. I work with Cosumnes Fire Department, and 8 months ago we started a smart first responder concept. And I think the first thing to consider is what our current state is. And that would be like emailing 50 of your friends and telling everybody to get on a conference call and imagine that there's a big emergency and figure out how you're going to communicate all on that conference call at the same time. Only you have to actually wait for your radio mic to key up to get the traffic across. And to consider what the visual value of augmented reality would provide first responders, law enforcement, firefighters, medical crews, in relationship to multi-sensor fusion. The thought to me is that it's a visual display of everything from biotelemetry, Internet of Things, big data, smart city, 3D mapping, remote sensing, building information modeling. It all comes together, as the commander mentioned the previous military session, for a fighter pilot. Like, what does it take for us to get an F-35 helmet? Because I'm in. And really, as or more important than the first responder community, it's that all civilians need it. That's why we have first responders. That's what I do this for. And so shouldn't everyone have an application on their phone so they know the exit pathway, they know what their 3D information is when there's an emergency so that they can escape? To me, for the venture capitalists, for social risk reduction, for the big picture, let's solve it for civilian use. Make it for civilian use and harden it for the rest of the people so that we can help people get out, and then first responders for those that need a little extra help.
So I'm Josh Lieberman. I'm an interoperability engineer. I don't make things work, but I make things work together. And AR and emergency response are a really interesting and challenging combination working together, because the reality part for a first responder is very real. That's the tangible, hands-on, localized place where they need to bring all of the information to bear to take the right actions to protect health and safety. It's really a situation where all of that information is needed, but AR in this case really needs to be ER and not OR. It needs to be enhanced reality, reality with more information, not obscured reality where you're looking at a building and there's all of these boxes popping up and preventing you from seeing that there's a victim here and there's a beam that's weakened there. So that enhancement is a real challenge, and nobody exactly knows how this innovation on one hand and these safety practices on the other go together. That's why we've been working with DHS and Open Geospatial Consortium on experiments. We take a bunch of innovators, providers, and users, and we do something called co-opetition. It's like we're going to figure out how to work together so we can then compete on something that works. And we try out things, how can we present information to people? Well, here's a whole bunch of different applications, for example, that pull in information over the Internet of Things. Well, that's great, except, well, a first responder doesn't want a whole bunch of applications. They want one application that gives them all that information. So that experimentation that brings together the innovation and the practice of emergency response is what really interesting challenge for AR and for public safety.
Thanks, Josh. You've heard from an inventor, an innovator, practitioner, first responder, academia. We also work with Department of Defense, FFRDCs, if you're not familiar with that, federally funded research and development centers, and also with national labs. And by the way, my name is John Merrill. I'm Department of Homeland Security. I work with, I'm in the Science and Technology Department, First Responders Group. I also work in a program called the Next Generation First Responder Apex Program. That is funded by Congress to go through to actually bring the first responders' capabilities to the digital age. And there are three core areas that I focus on. One, protection. Protect that first responder. That's their first line of defense. That means their clothing, wearable capabilities. The materials, the metamaterials, they're not quite there yet, but they're getting to the point where you can actually physically embed wearables and physiological sensors into that clothing. Smart vests, smart bulletproof vests. Those are to the point now they can physically be deployed and provide additional protection to the law enforcement officials so that if they get hit, they're notified. Not them themselves on scene, I'm talking about the on-scene commander, or to the PSAP. The PSAP is the 911 center, public safety answering point. Connectivity. Anytime you talk to a first responder, you will find out they want 100% connectivity. We know that's not possible, but we tried to do our best to give them that connectivity, whether we're using a land mobile radio, otherwise known as an LMR, bridging that gap between an LMR and broadband, or a software-defined radio, basically using a smartphone. You'll see a typical P25 compliant software application that's on your phone, and you'll have a PTT with push-to-talk capabilities where you can talk to a first responder one-on-one in a secure mode. The other area we're looking at is always aware, fully aware. You heard some briefings earlier that Kirk did on Audrey. Audrey's under our program. We partner with NASA JPL. Although Kirk said it was artificial intelligence, I won't tell our NASA engineers that. NASA engineers consider Audrey as what they call artificial general intelligence. If you look at artificial intelligence, you'll find it's normally constrained. You tell it what to do, it does it within the constraints you provide within the software-defined application. What Audrey does, in each instance, it's defined, each instance is given to a first responder. It learns from that first responder. So from the edge, from the first responder, from law enforcement, EMS, or from the firefighter, up to the battalion chief, or to the on-scene commander, even as far as up to the command center or to the PSAP, each can have its own instance. And not only that, but they can be networked. I heard earlier about this ability that during the surgery, if there's an instance where that surgeon thinks that he may be doing something wrong, he hesitates. I'm looking at the same thing with Audrey. Think of the first responder. I'll use firefighters as an example. They're responding to an incident. They have an instance of Audrey within the command vehicle and the apparatus that's responding. Think of all the sensors that are around them as they're responding to a particular unit, a particular structural fire, or any type of other emergency. Bring that data into Audrey. Audrey will parse it out, give them only the actionable information that they need. If something is missing, it will go out and it will search and bring that additional information in, provide it to the first responder. There's one point that I need to make, though, with respect to Audrey. Think of it as a digital assistant. However, it does not, and I repeat, it does not take out the human element. It's a decision support tool for the first responder community, and our expectation is that we'll be able to use it small scale within the next 12 to 18 months. And what I would like to see is somehow being incorporated into an AR type of capability where you have all these other sensors that are there, put it into some sort of on the windshield on a heads-up display so they can see. So there's a responding, they can get the information they need, so when they arrive on scene, they're not struggling with the information. They've already had that. They know exactly where to go. Anything else?
I think we're question time. Yeah?
All right, coming out of the shadows here. So let's make this interactive real quick here. Who's called 911 lately? Anyone's hand? Anyone on the stage here? Okay. Was it a police?
I flipped my truck over.
So, all right, police, fire, EMS, right? Those generally the...
My thought, sorry, but I'm just going to jump right in, is we should know. That is, a rollover? Oh, that's a vehicle extrication, dispatch, multiple units. It should happen now without even anyone needing to call, because a number of times it comes hours later where the call is actually made because somebody's over a hill. So that should come in, and yeah, and I should see it visually in AR on the way. Excuse me.
But it could be a law enforcement issue, obviously, right? Because,
They're usually there on those too.
yeah. So that's an example of the technology kind of adding an additional goodie to the response. Anyone else call 911 lately? We don't need to get into gory details, but. Okay, so emergency EMS, medical call, and that's a huge number of 911 calls these days, right? So where does AR technology come into something like EMS, emergency medical situations?
I'll take a shot as to what I envision in the next 5 years or more. Is that my daughter is actually a paramedic EMS firefighter in Fairfax City. And one of the biggest complaints that I receive from their department, and obviously from her, is the inability to communicate directly at all times with the emergency room when they're en route, and having them to actually pull out their either personal device to get the imagery to transport it on their wireless because they don't have the proper connectivity within the vehicle itself. If they have an AR capability, being able to have the visualization in front of them, being able to see directly into the patient and having that immediately transported back to the emergency room so they can actually do the triage with the doctor's guidance. And not only that, but the doctor can also prescribe certain meds which the paramedics are not authorized to do.
Yeah, when will be startup time, I guess we can have a scanner that scan the body and be able to detect maybe underground problem, a problem in the body. And AR could be used to visualize them with respect to the body so that you could assess the damage more quickly and find out if it's close to some critical part, a component, or extract something, maybe out.
So I think one thing it really helps with is positive status. So if you have, alerts, beep, 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 not only do you then need to figure out what did that apply to, but you also have to understand, okay, what alert situation did that give you, and what was the consequence of not hearing it? So you have a bunch of patients and you have beep, beep, beep. So which patient has what condition, and what is the condition of the other patients? So AR, you have not only, a indication of a patient in distress, but you have the positive indication that the other patients are okay. Mm-hmm. And so getting an overall picture of your perspective and not just, alerts of various sorts to untangle is a very powerful way that technology can be used.
So we had kind of a fire emergency, EMS emergency. Anyone call 911 for a police emergency?
Certainly, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I saw something a while ago that scared me. There was an officer on the side of the road that was in a altercation with a suspect, I guess is what you call it. And there were still individuals in the car. And he had called in, apparently had called in for assistance. And as the assistance was coming in, I was standing there, and a bad situation because I looked like a bad guy. So there was more than one of us. But I was wondering, is there any way that VR could have helped out in that situation, as in other people being able to see what had occurred previously or what was going on?
Right. So what I'm hearing is, in a police situation, you've got bystanders, you've got suspects, you've got law enforcement. How do you sort it out?
I'm going to jump on this and say if there's people taking images of a scene, multiple victims in an active shooter incident, and they uploaded to a central location in the cloud, and photogrammetry was used to make a 3D model that could come down in AR to the commanders and the responders, and we could have biotelemetry of the survivable victims and their location if they chose to make that information available, and sensors on the phone that maybe could depict where the shots are coming from. Maybe we can put where the suspect's location is, where the survivable patients are, and put it all in 3D and put it in front of the responders so they know as they go in, especially law enforcement officers who go in front of the fire and medic crews.
I mean, there's an important thing that you have interoperability of information where AR is important and where it isn't. So the first responder is looking a scene and getting information, the commander should have a map, should have a virtual display of the same information. It's having the same information presented in the appropriate way for each role in a response that's the really enhancement, the game changer for it.
And everyone should have it, to be able to get away and know the exit pathways if there's an an active shooter or fire, earthquake, flood, whatever it is.
So we are coming up on a time crunch here. Audience, thank you for sharing your stories. Panelists, thank you for sharing your insights. Appreciate it.